Hey there! When you think about your math centers or your literacy centers or really any type of small group instruction, are you using flexible groupings? This video is going to walk you through what exactly flexible groupings is, the benefits to using flexible groups in your classroom. We're also going to take a look at, in closer detail, my math block and how I worked that into that part of my day. We're also going to take a look at how we can rotate students around when using flexible groupings, as well as how to decide what student needs to go where when it comes to this type of structure. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's start with the definition of flexible groupings. What are they? Well, flexible groupings are actually not that hard to understand. It is simply the ability to group your students in a flexible way that's not locking them into a specific group for an extended period of time. Now, when it comes to grouping our students, the reason we call them flexible groupings is because simply that, they're flexible. They're based upon the needs of a skill deficit, usually a skill deficit, for that period of time. Using flexible groupings in your classroom does not lock your kids into groups that are defined at a general performance level. For example, I know that in the past, some ways teachers have grouped students is according to just an overall general level and not based on a specific skill. So kids will very much be labeled as below average, average, above average students because they are in that group. Flexible groupings gets away from that. Now sure, with flexible groupings, your students will probably end up in a certain group with certain kids, maybe more than once, but they're not locked in for an extended period of time. We're actually going to take a look at what I mean by that and how we can decide who goes in which groups. I think that one of the most practical ways to actually demonstrate how flexible groupings work is to give you a glimpse into my most recent math block schedule. So here's how it would work. We would have whole group instruction. I would teach a brand new skill. The students would have a chance to do some like think, pair, share things. Once we had a general understanding of the skill, the kids would be released back to their desks or their tables for independent practice. And then at that point, as students finish their independent practice assignment, they go into their small groups. The small groups, and you'll see here a chart of an example of the different types of activities that we have in our small group instruction time. What you will notice is I do not have a teacher table center or a teacher table small group. They are not rotating to the teacher table. Flexible groupings is why I have it set up this way. So when students finish their work during independent practice, they start their small group assignment that they have been sent to. Now, what you don't realize just by looking at this chart is that the students in each group going across each line are at varying different levels of understanding. There are low students, average students, above average students in each group. That's done intentionally because from there, once students are up and going in their small group time, usually I would have a few students left over that are still struggling with their independent practice activity. At that time, when I get down to just a few left, I will have them come meet me at the teacher table. We'll go ahead and go over helping them to finish their independent practice activity and then get them going on their center time. At that point, we usually have about 15 minutes left of small group time, and that's where flexible groupings are going to come in handy because I'm going to be pulling kids based upon skill deficits or based upon skill areas that certain students are excelling at, and I want to challenge them. So we're going to take a closer look at exactly what that looks like. Let's rewind a little bit in my math block. When the kids are at their tables and they're working on their independent practice activity, I am very much tuned in to how students are doing. And actually we can rewind this even a bit further and say, When I'm teaching whole group, I'm very tuned in on the level at which kids are understanding a skill. And so as I'm teaching that whole group, or as I'm walking around and seeing kids practice the skill, I'm jotting down things that I'm observing. This is a freebie that is offered in below this video. And it is just a very basic observation sheet that I like to use to decide where my kids are either excelling or struggling, or kind of just in general where they're at. Something like this is going to be key to flexible groupings. Why? Because it will tell you exactly who needs to meet for what reason. So if you see here, let me just zoom in a little bit. This is just a general example. If we have the math observations at the top, here's the week, September 20th through the 24th. As you can see, we would be teaching place value for that week. What I've done in each of those boxes is taken specific concepts that are being practiced or worked on, and I'm jotting down names next to or underneath each concept that needs to have additional practice. Now, you're not going to just be jotting down your low students. Sure, we've got low students on here, for sure, absolutely. We have to work on those skill deficits. But it's also important we're not ignoring those at grade level and above grade level students, so that we can meet them where they're at and continue to challenge and push them. Once we have these filled out, this is what you're going to use during your small group time to call kids back to the table. So if it is small group time, my independent practice kiddos who are struggling are now finished up with me. They're in their small groups. Now it's time for me to do a little bit of intervention time with my flexible groups. So depending on the skill, maybe you get to 2 in a day. Maybe you just get to 1. It all depends on what it is that you are practicing. So for example, when I look at this sheet, I see that these 5 kids, Josie, Ava, Tyler, Max, and Joe, those 5 need additional help with expanded form. I'm going to call those 5 back. They're not all in one group together. I might have Max in one group and Josie in another group, and Ava and Joe might be together in another group. They're gonna all just come over to the table. We're gonna work on specifically that skill that they're struggling with, and they're going to be released back to their small group time. Now, I'm sure you're, as a teacher, going, well, wait a minute. Then they're not gonna get their small group activity done. What if they don't get their center done? Guess what? We have to let that go. We have to let that go, because truly, how I've always run small groups is it's a time to practice and reinforce skills that the kids have already been introduced to. And so, therefore, I'm not going to grade their small group activity. If they don't finish it, it's not the end of the world. Now, that said, am I going to say it's a free-for-all? Do whatever you want? Absolutely not. No. But I'm also not going to stress over the fact that they only got 3/4 of the way done with their activity because they had to come to the teacher table. So that is how I use our math observation form. I just dropped my earring. My math observation form, and I also have them, that's funny, I also have them for literacy. It could be grammar, writing, phonics, a reading comprehension skill, all available for free below this video. Let's take another peek at this rotation chart. So I talked about how flexible groupings are going to look when kids are coming to you. How every time they come to you, they're going to be a different mix of students. Flexible, right? They're also going to be flexible, like I said, inside of each of these rows. Now, for an entire week, that's the group that they're with. Each line is a group. They stay with their group on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You may decide after just 1 week, you're going to just move a few around based upon, it could be anything. Honestly, let's be real. There are some times where there's combinations of kids that just don't work. So the following week, you're gonna switch them. That's the beauty of not being locked into a specific level of kids as your group. You can mix them around, right? So you might decide to switch them after 1 week. maybe you find that these groups are really, really working well together. So you might keep them the same for 3-4 weeks, and that's okay too. But you're not going to keep them there all year. In fact, you're not going to keep them there all quarter. You're going to give them the opportunity to switch around and get new groups from time to time. It's just healthy. It's good for kids to work with other students. The beauty of having that really nice mixed group of students too is that, if you've got kids that are highly skilled, above average students, they're going to be coming in real handy to be helpers for those kids that are maybe struggling with skills. So that's also really nice. But when it comes to rotating the activities every day, so every day they get to go to one center. That's just how I've done it. At the end of each day, what I do is, and sometimes it's not till that next day, right before they go into their center, I take the bottom, so you see on this chart, the very bottom activity, that white card gets taken out. I move all the activity names down one, and I take the bottom and I put it back up onto the top. And I do that each day, so 5 days in a week, 5 different rotations, and it works really nice. Literally all of your stations can be rotated out within 10 seconds and they're set to go for the next day. There's also this is actually in my TPT store. It also comes with a digital version if that's your preference. I don't know why, for whatever reason, I've just always liked to use the pocket chart and print them out. The other thing I want to share with you here in this pocket chart, you will see that all of the names are different shapes. There's different shapes for each of the names. So you could pre-type their names and assign them a shape, or you could print them out blank and write on them with like Expo marker. The different shapes provide an opportunity for the teacher to also group students in other ways. So if you have a group of students that are really, really advanced all the time, and you're always working on ways to enrichment activities, you might place all of them in the circle group. And that would be a quick, easy way to say, if you have a circle by your name, come back to the teacher table. That is, I will say, not as, I'm not going to rely on that as much, because then it's truly not flexible groupings if you're always just assigning a level to a shape. But I will say, overall though, you could work that in and have that also be a quick reference strategy for how you can pull groups back as well by the name of the shape. All right, let's just recap what are flexible groupings and why are they beneficial. So flexible groupings, again, are flexible groups of students that are ever changing. They don't allow for us to lock students into the above group or the below group. They don't identify them based upon their overall performance in a general way. Flexible groups not only are ever changing, but they can be based on a lot of things. They can be based off of interests. They can be based off of behaviors. They can be also randomly designed, and that's okay too. In fact, that brings a little bit of freedom. And they really are a really nice way to have your small group time ran. And most importantly, flexible groups are very, very specific and intentional, so that when you are pulling groups of students, you're pulling them based off of a skill deficit or just a skill in general that they might need some enrichment opportunities. I hope that you enjoyed this video all about flexible groupings, and I hope that you were able to pull a few golden nuggets out of it, and maybe even challenge yourself to think about how you group your students in either math or your literacy small group.